Small talk. You know that wonderfully pointless exercise where we discuss about absolutely nothing of value for what feels like an eternity? The weather, the traffic, and how crazy it is that it's already mid September. All that riveting stuff. But why do we do this? Let's dive into the painful history of small talk. So, one question we gotta ask ourselves is, what is small talk? In scientific terms, it's talking for the sake of talking. More often than not, no new ground is broken, no great revelations are made, no mysteries of the universe are uncovered. It's just woven into the very fabric of human society, though. But why? Why do we subject ourselves to it? Even though most of us would rather discuss literally anything else. Small talk has been around for millennia. People have been discussing about the weather since cavemen first probably grunted about the clouds. Although that said, cavemen probably grunted about other things too, like, nice fire you've got there, followed by an ooga booga. And just like that, small talk became a cornerstone of human society. Why? Because people probably needed a way to avoid awkward silences. Which is honestly just a way of projecting that you're a friend while gauging if the other one might have reasons to be a foe. Without any actual commitment, of course. It's like a handshake. Well, the handshake in particular came about in about the 5th century BCE, Greece. It was a way to communicate peace. You would show your bare hand and, to show that, hey, okay, I don't have a weapon, I'm not going to hurt you. And that in itself came from the very primal human need to, well, show that you're not dangerous to the other person, you mean no harm. And the reason you would tell someone that you mean no harm is so that no harm is done to you. That would explain why one's urge to fill in a silence would be so strong. So, more often so with strangers than people whom you know closely. Because, when you're around a stranger, they don't know who you are or what your intentions are, nor do you. And small talk would fill in that gap, and in that chatter you would find maybe some common ground, or at least, yeah, this person is not of any consequential threat to you. It does build rapport, they say, which is arguably true. And I say arguably for three reasons. One, nobody really wants to engage in small talk. It's usually unnecessary and a boring endeavor. If it was either or, you might, but it's both. And what if you wanted to make a really small and hopefully inconsequential comment, which balloons into this entire big conversation you don't want to have with the person whom you don't know, and maybe have better things to do. And even if you don't, what if you just don't want to waste time on that? At that point, if you cut off, that's going to be rude. So how do you avoid that? You avoid the small talk entirely. Second, most people would get defensive when being approached for small talk because, again, well, the other person doesn't know your intentions or who you are or what you're speaking to them for. And in this age, of social media and, especially post COVID, where the people who were growing up at the time didn't really have access to many opportunities of engaging in small talk, that social skill didn't really develop. And these people who often also tend to prefer texting instead of calling or seeing someone in person, you can really bypass the whole how are you, what's happening, and blah blah, and just really get to the point as it happens on text. Third, for your small talk to be successful, you need to be good at small talk. I mean, again, social media, COVID, dating apps have almost made making small talk a bit of a faux pas. So it's not entirely good manners to approach someone for no reason at all and picking up a conversation that they're not going to be particularly interested in. Now, at least one way to not sound boring while you're at it is, to at least level up to medium talk. You could, have questions like, what's your stance on veganism? If someone asks me what's up or how you're doing, my answer to that question would be, even if I have something interesting to tell those people, the fact of the matter is, I would really rather not. There are, better things to be spoken about. If popular opinion is anything to go by, nobody really likes small talk. And, if someone comes along and says that, actually, you know what, I love small talk and talking to strangers and blah, blah, you're probably the kind of person who actively gets avoided during a flight. But the primal human instinct dictates that we have to engage in this nonsense. So here we are, asking people about their weekends and how they're doing, or pretending to be interested in what their cousin, whom you've never seen or spoken to or are interested in, ate for lunch 3 days ago. All the while hoping that they don't respond with a sincere answer and zoning out if they do. Because much like our ancient ancestors, we want to come off as non-hostile. The subconscious decision is more about personal safety and personal security more than interest in the other person. Of course, in modern times, the balance is switched the other way around, but it's there. Well, here's the thing. We do need small talk, but not because it's great or necessary, but because the alternative is much less popular. Now, if you imagine walking into a room where the only two options are a deep philosophical debate or silence, um, small talk saves us from that social abyss. To be honest, I prefer to be in the latter situation, except that that situation is particularly there. What people do want to do instead is gossip, and nothing against gossip really. Like, to be fair, there is more than enough circumstantial and evolutionary evidence to suggest the credibility of gossip came about as the way to talk about a person you might know in common and gauge their patterns of how they deal with people and things around them, so that people can figure if that particular person is trustworthy or not. This is yet another example of our primal selves trying to figure out if someone's a friend or foe. But the problem is that gossip, being the dish as spicy as it is, in addition to being much less mentally taxing, becomes the entire conversation instead of just part of it. There are some credible reasons to engage in small talk, and I'm just going to touch upon a few of them. One of them is to use small talk as a tool to ease social anxiety. For people with social anxiety, small talk can be both a blessing and a curse. It offers low stakes interaction that doesn't require deep thinking or vulnerability. On the other hand, the pressure to engage in small talk can make someone anxious. It may be slightly counterintuitive. The person might be constantly trying to think what to say next, or feeling trapped in this superficial exchange of words. Second would be small talk in the workplace. In professional settings, small talk often serves as a tool for building work relationships and fostering teamwork. When you have a conversation with someone about something very, very tangential, based on whatever context that the both of you are in, such as a workplace, something that your boss said or something that your co-worker did, you're going to find more common ground based on this preliminary common ground, and you can build from there. It's using small talk as a defense mechanism. If you're in a situation where you feel that you may have to answer a lot of questions that you don't want to, you don't want to open up that much, you don't want to be vulnerable, you can keep it at small talk. You can get on to one more tangent of something that someone said, or even talk about the weather, and the other people, for the sake of not wanting to sound rude, are going to comply unless unless it gets a bit too much. Small talk as a form of politeness. Sometimes small talk is less about the conversation itself and it's more about maintaining social decorum. Even if you've portrayed the idea that you're not hostile to the other person, non hostility is very, very neutral. It could mean either a zero or it could bend towards you being warm. Now, if you do engage in small talk with someone as a form of politeness, and hey, how's it going? Like a new co-worker, for example, hey, where are you from? How's your experience going here? Is there something I can help you with? Those kinds of conversation do add rapport, and it's polite, so that's something you can do. In today's day and age, where we interact more with our phones than we do with people, we genuinely do. We text more ideas of consequence than we speak about them. We have reached a point where people don't really want to engage in phone calls, simply because a phone call means that they're going to have to go through a whole lot of fluff before someone actually gets to the point. Texting has gained so much popularity, a lot of people prefer it over phone calls, simply because you can get straight to the point. And if these patterns are to be believed, it's logically believable that it's only a matter of time before people just cut out the small talk. Let's be real for a sec. The number of times you've actually enjoyed small talk can probably be counted on one hand. Small talk isn't about necessarily connecting with people, it's about avoiding awkwardness. You see, silence makes people uncomfortable. They need to fill a void. So what's the solution? Do we scrap small talk? It's likely to happen, but with time. Until then, we can at least make it more interesting. Instead of asking about the weather, we can say, what's your stance on aliens? What kind of music do you enjoy, and what exactly about it? Asking deeper questions. If you could time travel, where would you go? Or my actual favorite one, what manner of things interest you? Just Get a list of topics, and then you can just see what topic you have in common and just get there. Instead of the whole, sports, no. Movies, no. Whatever. But unless this video finds a whole lot of viewers, it's unlikely that the idea of skipping small talk is gonna come into conversation. Which is exactly why small talk would remain necessary for longer than it needs to. The social contract based off our biological instinct and social conditioning have intertwined to a point where we find ourselves engaging in small talk before we realize we have engaged in small talk, or before we realize that there are other alternatives. If you are going to have small talk, you might as well make it count. If you can't find a topic, you could always address the narrative. Addressing the narrative meaning to acknowledge and directly engage with a prevailing story, idea, or perspective, especially one that's been accepted or influential. It's it would involve responding to or discussing the narrative, often with the intention of clarifying, supporting, challenging, or reframing it. Simply put, here's an example. There's a very popular and valid narrative of the dangers of social media. To address that narrative, to be like, okay, yes, it is because ABC, and why not because ABC? The topic is relatable, relevant, and interesting, and would help you figure out if the person you're speaking to has any intelligence or not. And it is probably more exciting than to ask, have you had dinner yet? In the end, it looks like small talk's gonna be around for a while. It has remained, and probably will for a while, a necessary evil of human interaction. We hate it, but so far we need it. So the next time you find yourself in an endless loop of weather talk, or forced to pretend that you care about someone's annoying coworker, remember this. You're not alone. We're all in this together, playing this same ridiculous game. And who knows, maybe you can move to medium talk or avoid small talk entirely. Until then, about this weather though, might rain.